Hey, this is Scott with Namagear. This is part 2 of a 2-part series that I wanted to do on hanging a gather-in hammock. And the reason I'm doing this is not to instruct you on how to hang your hammock, but to preview a new item I've got coming out. It's actually out now, that I call the UNLevel. And what it's going to do, it's going to help you get a more consistent lay faster when you're out in the field. I'm going to come up so you can get a close-up of this before I get into how we use it. If you're familiar with line levels, this is not a whole lot different than the ones you can buy in a store. But as you can see, one leg, the leg on the right, is longer than the leg on the left. Why is that important? Well, as we get out in the field and you hang your hammock, if you hang your hammock level, the low part is going to be in the center of a hammock. And if you look at my body, there's more mass in my torso than there is on my legs. Therefore, my torso, my upper body, is heavier than my lower body. Why is that important? Because if I hang in a hammock that's hung perfectly level, with the low part being the center point of the hammock, the heavy part of my body is going to want to find its way to the lowest part of the hammock. That's not good, because what's going to happen in the middle of the night, I'm going to find myself having slid down to where the heaviest part of my body is in the center of the hammock. What's that do? It takes me out of the sweet part of the hammock and also moves me off, possibly off of my insulation that's keeping me warm in my hammock. So how do we overcome this deficiency per se? Well, I don't think it's news to you necessarily, if you've been around hammocks for a while, to have heard that you want to hang your head end lower than your foot end. So this is the head end of my hammock, and this is the foot end. If we're looking right now, we're on pretty level ground here in my backyard, and you can pretty much tell that the foot end is higher than the head end. Pretty easy to tell with your eyes. The problem is when you get out in the field, the ground we hang on is not necessarily level, which is one of the benefits of hanging in a hammock. You don't have to find level ground in order to get a great night's sleep. So if you're on the side of a hill, if you're near water where the ground isn't level, there are many different instances where you're not going to be able to tell level and how your hammock is hung properly. Because if you're on the side of a hill, the side to the downhill is going to look like it's hung a lot higher than the upside. The ground gives you a false sense of level. I've got a pretty good eye for level. I've done carpentry work a lot of my life, and so I think I've got a pretty good eye for level, and I've actually questioned this unit out in the field. As silly as that sounds, the whole reason I carry this, and I've been carrying some iteration of this probably now for 4 years. Finally got it polished to where I'm happy that it works, and it works well. It works every time, and I won't go without it. I'm gonna have a really bad night if I'm not going with this. I can figure it out, but I won't be happy that I left it at home. So you can see on this hammock here, I've got one hung here. This is on 7/64 am steel. It's made to fit on there pretty easily. There's just a hook on each side. I shaped it so it'll fit on 7/64. It fits on smaller lines just as well and doesn't come off very easily. So it's going to stay on your line. I leave it on my hammocks. They're cheap enough. You can put one on each hammock, and it's worth having it on there. So how do you use it? If you've never used a level before, you're going to see in that level, in that vial, is a bubble. And as you raise and lower one end to the other, that bubble moves back and forth. Now there's 2 black lines in there. Your target is going to be in between those black lines. Does that have to be perfectly in there? No, it doesn't. But you want it to be pretty close. The closer you're going to get to that same spot every time, the more consistent your lay is going to be. So I'm going to sit in my hammock. Actually, I'm going to lay in the hammock in the position that I'm going to be in when I'm sleeping. Get on your diagonal so you have a nice flat lay, and then look at your bubble. Now right now it's pretty centered. I already have my hammock set pretty good. But if it were off, if the bubble were further to my head end, that means my head end's a little too high. If you know about hydraulics and air, air bubbles rise in water, right? So if the bubble's too far to your head end, it means your head end's too high. You're going to want to lower your head end. The bubble's too far to your foot end, it means your foot end's too high. You're going to lower your foot end. Now, I could lower it or raise it by coming to my suspension here and tightening it, but I don't want to do that because I've already got my suspension set. I've got my roughly a 30-degree angle on my suspension. I've got my tension in my ridgeline where it's not guitar string tight, but it's not loose either. If the tension on this isn't proper, then my unlevel is not going to hang properly either. So you want to make sure you have this taut and not flopping because it'll change the angle. So I don't want to adjust my height by using my suspension here. I want to go to the tree. I already know this angle's good, my tension's all good, so I just go to the tree and raise my strap. If I need to raise this end, lower my strap on the tree if I want to lower this end. Same thing on the foot end. And that's the same thing you want to do when setting the height of your hammock. Some people are particular about their sit height. They want to be higher so it's easier to get out of. Some people want to be lower to the ground. They can cook on the ground from their hammock. That's all personal preference. Again, if you want to change this height though, I would go to the tree and raise or lower the suspension on the tree to raise the whole hammock. Once you get the tension set in your suspension, which I covered in the first video, you don't want to mess with this part of it here because your suspension is all set as far as tension goes. Then you just want to mess with height to get the angle of your ridgeline proper as well as the height off the ground. Okay, so this is the UNLevel. You can find it on our website. I'm going to come back in for a little close-up here. The longer end, this side here, it's the side that's got NAMA on it, goes to your foot end. The shorter side that's got the little mountains on it goes to your head end. And you're going to clip it on your ridgeline just like that. Make sure you're laying in your hammock when you get it set, and that will get your foot end set roughly 10 to 11 inches higher than your head end. And for most hammocks, that's going to get you in a pretty good spot for a good night's sleep. This is Scott with NAMA Gear. Remember, need adventure, make adventure. Get out there and be safe.